Hey guys, welcome back to the Midwest.motogirl podcast. I'm your host, Sydney, aka Squid. If you have not listened to episode 14, you probably will not understand the squid reference. So do yourself a favor and go listen to that episode next, or at least check out the funny cover art to go along with that episode. So today's episode is going to be probably pretty short. It's just going to be a quick recap of my most recent race weekend with the Central Roadracing Association up in Brainerd, Minnesota. And so that was over the 4th of July. So I hope that everybody had a fantastic 4th of July and Independence Day holiday. I was super excited to get to spend the holiday with some of my closest friends doing the things that we love, racing motorcycles. And it was a big weekend at Brainerd. I have never been in northern Minnesota over a holiday weekend or like really that much in the summertime. And I did not realize that the population in northern Minnesota like quadruples for summer weather and especially like long holiday weekends because there was so much traffic and so many people in that area. But it is a really, really beautiful area. There's lakes everywhere. And it seems like there's a lot of people with lake houses and cabins and all of those kinds of things that they were up there enjoying for the weekend. But even at the track, it was a big weekend because they had cars on the drag strip, they had motorcycles on the road course, and they had like a mud racing kind of deal. I was part of a 4x4 off-road club when I was in college at Michigan Tech, and their big fundraiser every year was to host like a fall mud bog to raise money for the club so that we could buy tools and equipment and stuff for off-roading and for recovery. And so these, like the trucks that they had up there looked like mud bog trucks. But the event wasn't like all just a mud bog. I didn't get the chance to get over there and watch it because I was racing throughout the day. But all of the videos that I saw after the fact, it was kind of like mud drags with some jumps in there. And then they also had a mud bog pit. So I'm not exactly sure what all went on over there from like a mud racing off-road standpoint, but I imagine that it was pretty cool. So I missed out on that, but that was going on at the track. And then they also had fireworks on Saturday night. So there was just a lot going on. It was a really fun weekend. And part of it being a fun weekend was my best friend Mary was able to come up to Minnesota with her husband and come see me race for the first time. So that was really fun and exciting too. So now let's get to the racing. So again, we were up in Brainerd with the Central Roadracing Association. And this was round number 3. This weekend was a little bit different because Saturday afternoon they had a 3-hour endurance race versus the sprint racing. But we'll get into that in a second. But anyway, so Friday was race practice. And at the end of the day, it just felt very blah, like kind of meh. Nothing special, nothing spectacular. It was really hard for me to get into a groove on Friday because it was so hot. It was really, really humid. And the wind was just brutal. And on a little bike in the wind, you really feel it. And so I had laps that were 2 minutes. And then I had laps that were 2 minutes and like 16 seconds or 2 minutes and 20 seconds, which is slower than I've ever been at Brainerd before. And so like it was just kind of very meh. But I did meet some awesome other racers. I got the opportunity to meet this girl, Deanna. She came over to our pit and said hi. And she's awesome. She was always like super encouraging, super fun, excited to be there and to see new racers and meet other girl racers and the whole 9 yards. But anyways, so she had asked me how the day went and I was like, it was okay. And she goes like, well, that doesn't sound very encouraging. And I was like, well, like it kind of is what it is. And she was like, well, I feel the exact same way. And she was like, my lap times were all over the place. The wind sucked. It's humid. And so it kind of made me feel better that we both were on the same page with that. But then there was the chance of rain for Saturday, like a big chance of rain for Saturday. And we could all see storms like rolling in Friday night on the radar. And so we're like, it's going to storm all night Friday and it's going to rain all morning on Saturday. So the guys in our pit, like, they busted their butts and they mounted like a ridiculous number of rain tires so that we could all still race if it rained in the morning, which was awesome. Like, I feel like our group is just like really, really cohesive, where we all help everybody and we all help each other, and we all work on stuff throughout the weekend, and everybody kind of knows what their job is. So that was cool, and they just completely busted their butt, and I'm thankful for that, because I had rain tires and I was ready for it in case it came, but then it never came. So that ended up being okay. But I also got pretty much all new front suspension this weekend. So when I bought my Yamaha R3 a year ago, part of the price and part of the bike, it was advertised that it had Öhlins front fork cartridges, and then it had Öhlins a rear spring as well. And so when I got to Chicago to pick it up last year, all of the race suspension had been taken off the bike and it was all back to stock. And the previous owner handed me everything in boxes and said, here you go. And I was kind of just like, what is this? And he was having trouble selling it as a race bike, so he thought that he would sell it as a street bike. And then he didn't have any luck selling it as a street bike either, so then he said, well, I'll take it back to being a race bike again. And he just like went back and forth a handful of times from what it sounds like. But there were some problems with the fork cartridges when I installed them last year. So I had to take them back out, and I've been running stock OEM front suspension for the last year. And the parts to fix the cartridges had been on back order for a while. One of the guys that I race with had kind of like bounced on my front suspension, and he was like, whoa, this is terrible. And then he was nice enough to reach out to his suspension guy and see if his suspension guy could get me the parts to fix my cartridges any sooner. And he also talked to him about doing my forks at the track. So Friday night, I went and talked to that suspension person. I believe his shop is Adrenaline Engineering, and he's out of Minnesota, but he comes to CRA, and he was doing suspension and things like that for people at the track. So I went and talked to him, and he said, yeah, bring them on over. I'll do your forks tonight. So Friday night, I tore my whole bike, or the whole front end off my bike. And I shouldn't say the whole front end. It was just the front wheel, front forks. But I took those over to him. He installed the cartridges. He fixed the cartridges. He polished the fork tubes. He did a whole bunch of work to my front forks because they were kind of in rough shape. And then I went out on Saturday morning to ride it. And at first I was like, whoa, this is way different. And then after like one lap on the track, I was like, whoa, this is awesome different. My bike has never felt so stable in the front as it did after I had those cartridges installed. So they did all the super stock races Saturday in the morning, and then they did the 3-hour endurance race in the afternoon. So super stock races, I ran in the featherweight class, which is 300s, and in ultra lightweight, which is 400s. And to be honest, I have no idea where I finished in either of those races. Somewhere kind of mid-pack, kind of where I've been at all year. But in the featherweight race, I got down to a 1:58 lap time, which is 2 seconds faster than I was in my fastest lap in June. And so I was pretty pumped up and excited about it. And then the endurance race was Saturday afternoon. It was supposed to be a 3-hour relay style endurance race. So everybody rode their own bike, and you just swapped transponders. Everybody had to run the same transponder and share that among all the different bikes. I had formed a team with a girl that rode a 300 that's from Minnesota. And then one of our Track Addicts people, he does not ride a little bike or a 300, but he wanted to do the endurance race and he didn't have a team. So one of the other guys in our pit offered him, hey, you can ride my bike or ride my old bike that was a 300 so that he could race with us. That was really nice of him, and I'm really appreciative of that because that race was awesome. I did not know that endurance racing would be that much fun, but it was a blast. And the girl that was on my team, Unfortunately, she crashed during the warm-up lap of our featherweight race in the morning. And so her knee was a little bit banged up. She wasn't feeling like real confident in riding. And so about 30 minutes before the race, she said, I just don't think that I'm going to do it. I'm really sorry. I don't mean to leave you guys hanging. And so there's no hard feelings there. Everything was fine. But once that happened, I was just like, okay, we're going to do it on our own. We're going to be a 2-man team and we're going to ride and it's going to be fine. And the guy that had loaned a bike, he was like, oh my God, you guys are both going to be toast if you're a 2-man team for the endurance race. And then you're going to race all day again tomorrow. So he was going to do the race. And then he's like, well, then I'm going to be toast and I have to do tires tonight. So there was a new guy that came with us that rides a 600. He's a Track Addicts person as well. This was his first race weekend with the CRA, his second race weekend total. He's also never ridden a little bike before. Scott said, here, do you want to do the endurance race with them? Do you want to ride my 300? And so the three of us formed a team and it was great. There was a couple of red flags, so we got some free transitions. But if you've never seen an endurance race before, the pit setup is so cool. So everybody kind of like relocates their pit, basically so that it's right next to the track. And then you have all the bikes lined up along like the hot pit area. And people are like jumping back and forth over the wall from like hot pit to do bike exchanges, to do tire warmers. It was really, really cool to see. I'd never seen an endurance race. I'd never participated in an endurance race before. And like I said, it was just really cool to see. I wish that I would have run my GoPro or taken some pictures that afternoon just so that people could see like the setup, because again, it's cool. That's all I can really say about it. But endurance racing, the whole goal is to run as many laps as you can within the time frame, and then you transition between riders. But all the laps for your team are cumulative. So we ended up running, I believe, 65 laps over the 3 hours. And like I said, there was a couple of red flags. So any time that was down or that the track was closed for the red flag, you didn't get that back. So it probably ended up actually only being a 2.5-hour race. But yeah, so 65 laps between the three of us. We finished fourth in the GP0 class, which is basically the 300 class for endurance racing. And we had a blast. And then Saturday night, I was toast, like just so tired once the adrenaline wore off of the day. And I was ready to fall asleep in like my lawn chair at 8 p.m. Honestly, if they would not have had fireworks at the track on Saturday night, I probably would have gone to bed at 8 p.m. But I wanted to stay up and see the fireworks. So we did that. We had a fire. We all hung out together like we always do. And so it was a good time. And then on Sunday, they did Superbike and GP classes for sprints. So I ran 2 ultra lightweight races and then 2 featherweight races between the GP and the Superbike classes. And I remember coming back from the Superbike featherweight race, and I had not finished in the top. I had gotten passed by a whole bunch of people, but I came back and I was like, holy cow, that is the best I've ever ridden a motorcycle in my entire life. And so one of the guys that was with us, he was like, okay, like, well, tell me more. Like, why do you think that was the best you've ever ridden in your whole life? And so I got a really good start during that race. I ended up leading the race until we got to turn 3, and then I got passed by one person. And I was in second place until turn 9. And I went wide coming out of turn 9, dirt biked it through the grass. And while I was in the grass, 3 other people got around me. And so then I was in like 5th or 6th place. And slowly throughout the race, I continued getting passed. But I felt confident. I was in a groove. I was using my eyes. And it just felt really fast. And turns out it was the best that I've ever ridden in my entire life. 1, because I had brand new suspension. And 2, it was 3 seconds faster than what my fastest lap was in June. So I ended up hitting a 1:57.3 lap time was my fastest lap. And I had lots of consistent 57s, 58s, 59s throughout that race. So it was like very consistently faster than what I was in June. And I think my fastest lap in June was a 2-minute 0.5. So 2 minutes flat and 500 milliseconds, however you say that. But yeah, so over 3 seconds faster, which is remarkable. And I was so excited. I was so pumped up. And then in the ultra lightweight race number 2, that class is up to 450 cc's are eligible, so supermotors in that class. And there is a gal that has come to Hastings before. She races regularly with the CRA, and she rides a supermoto. And so I got her off the start, and she ended up passing me during the race. And the whole rest of the race, I was kind of like right with her, where I was trying to pass her, but then she would motor me because she's on a 450 with lots of torque, and I'm on a 300 with zero torque, or not zero, but 300s aren't super torque machines the way a 450 supermoto is. And I couldn't quite get around her. And I came back and I was like, gosh dang it, like I need to be more aggressive. I need to learn racecraft, because there were so many times where I was like next to her and I had showed her a wheel, and then she would motor away from me, or she would slow way down in a corner and basically park me in a corner, and I'd be like, okay, go around her. But then I didn't have the torque and the acceleration to get around her, and she would drive away from me again. And so on the last lap, there was 2 spots where she left the door open where I could have passed, and they would have probably been pretty close inside passes. And I kind of got nervous and was like, I don't want to just stuff her on the inside. And I was too courteous, basically. And so I came back knowing that I was too courteous and was kind of like, gosh, what are you doing? But then the next race, again, that was my featherweight race. And I was like, holy cow, I've never ridden that great in my entire life. And so then for the third ultra lightweight race of the weekend, so that was my third race on Sunday, I went out and I was like, all right, I'm going to get her. And same thing, I got her off the line. I had a really good start. I was up front for a lot of the start. And I'm getting more comfortable being up front and or kind of like in the middle of a whole bunch of bikes at the start up at Brainerd. We'll see how it goes at Hastings, because turn 1 at Hastings is much slower and much tighter corner than turn 1 up at Brainerd is. But I am starting to get more comfortable like at the starts and like with a whole bunch of bikes around me. So that's great. But she ended up catching me like middle of the race. And same thing, I raced back and forth with her until the end of the race. And they were not my fastest lap times, but there was lots of passing going on. She would pass me, I would pass her, she would pass me back on motor. And it was just a really, really fun race. And on the last lap, I got in what I thought was a little bit too hot into turn 6. And so I slowed way up, and she was able to get away from me. And so she did finish in front of me. I was not able to catch her and stay in front of her at the end of the race. But like I said, we had so much passing back and forth between the two of us. It was just a really fun race. And I came back and all I could think was like, gosh, that race was so fun. And I even told all the guys in my pit, I was like, that was so much fun. Like, even though she beat me, I had so much fun battling back and forth with her. And like, to me, that's what it's all about. Like, I don't care if I win or if I lose. I don't care what position I finish in, as long as I have fun. And battling with her was just so much fun. So then we had a short little break, and then was the last featherweight race of the weekend. And there is a guy on a red R3 that runs at Brainerd. And for whatever reason, all season long, he is the person that I want to beat. And the very first race of the season, he passed me on the inside. And I thought he was going to hit me, because he is very aggressive when he goes into corners. And I was not expecting it. It kind of felt like he was a little bit reckless. But since then, I've been like, okay, that's the person that I want to beat. And he's been consistently 2, 3, 4 seconds faster than me all year now. But I still really want to beat him, like just him. And I don't know why. It seems like the last couple of years, I pick a person where I'm like, I want to beat that person, and like, that's my target. Well, anyways, so he's my target. And so I had a 57.3 in the morning on Sunday. and I was bound and determined, number one, to get into the 56s, and number two, to beat the red R3 guy. And so my start was awesome. I got out front. I did not lead the race, but I was up at the front of the pack for quite a while, for the whole first lap. And then the leaders, they're like 6 seconds faster than a lap than me. And so they kind of got away from me, and I was just out by myself, but I was pushing really hard. I was moving so good. And I was bound and determined, like, to get into the 56s. Like I said, I was in a groove. My eyes were working, leaning off the bike. Like, I just felt comfortable. And I was pushing it pretty good. And then I had a little whoopsie. So I had my first on-track crash. I crashed when I first started riding motorcycles. I crashed on the street down in Arkansas on a motorcycle trip. And that was 10 years ago now. Since I crashed on the street, and I've been going to the track for a while. I've been racing for a couple of years now. I've yet to have an actual crash during a race or at the track. And it happened during my last race of the day, where I was determined to get into the 56s. And basically, I was on the gas coming out of turn 5. So I was already past the apex. But there's kind of some bumps in the track, like a few feet off the apex. And as I was on the gas, leaning off the bike, I went over those bumps, which kind of upset the rear suspension a little bit, and I could feel the rear kind of moving. And I stayed on the gas, and I was also kind of in the point where I was transitioning my body from being leaned off the bike to being like backup neutral on the bike. And I will be honest, my transitions are not very smooth. And so somewhere in the process of hitting that bump and my transition to get back onto the bike, so the rear suspension unloaded. I thought I was about to get just high-sided to the moon. And then the rear suspension found traction again. And so it like reloaded. But I believe when it did that it unloaded the front, because then I just tucked the front. And I thought that I was going to be able to drive out of it when the rear was moving around. I was like, you just drive out of it, stay on the gas, stand the bike up. And yeah, then the front was just, as soon as I got traction in the rear, the front was just completely gone, and I'm sliding across the track and into the grass. And I was kind of like, shit, but it all happened so quickly, where I was just like, what do you do? Like, this is happening. So I get up out of the grass, get to the wall, get away from my bike. The corner worker comes, picks up my bike. We look it over. It doesn't look like it's too bad. But like, while I was kind of like sitting on the ground or laying on the ground to make sure that I was okay before I stood up. And then once I stood up, I could feel like the pressure in my suit where my airbag had deployed. And I will be honest, if you do not ride at the track with an airbag, you should really consider getting one. So I was at like 9 or 10,000 RPM in 4th gear. I don't know exactly how fast I was going, because I have a sticker over my speedometer so that I'm not focusing or looking at my speeds. But I felt like I was moving pretty good. I'm going to say I was probably going 60 miles an hour or more, just based on what gearing I was running, what RPM and gear that I was in. And like, it broke a clip-on off because my bike hit the ground so hard. And yeah, I was moving. But I got up. Once I got up and got to the wall, I was kind of standing there, and the corner workers like asking me questions to make sure that I'm like coherent and stuff. And I could not stop smiling. And then I started laughing, where I was just like, this sucks. I can't believe that it just happened, but I'm also not upset that it just happened. Like, 10 out of 10. It was an awesome experience. And I hate to say that crashing was an awesome experience, because you never want to crash, and it sucks to have to fix your stuff and to send in your airbag to get repacked and all of those things. Like, but the weekend as a whole was awesome. The crash was fine. I had a huge adrenaline rush going, like, during and after the crash. And I was riding so well before I crashed that I'm not mad about it. I wasn't mad then. And so during the race, I was standing behind the wall with one of the corner workers, and pretty soon I see two guys from our pit coming over on pit bikes, like looking for me. And so I just waved to them from across the track. And then that kind of like gave me like these warm fuzzies, because it was like, all right, I'm with the right group. And I always knew that I was like with the right group of racers and the right group of friends. But in that moment, it was like, it was a reminder. It was just another reminder that you're in the right group and you fit here and you belong here, because they had been watching my race close enough to know that something happened and came looking for me. And basically that was my weekend. After the races were over, we were able to go out and get my bike, bring it back. I looked it over, and it was looking it over after back in our pit. It was definitely rougher than what I thought that it was right after the crash, but it's okay. Like, it happens, and I'm not upset about it. It'll be all fixed up and ready to go, probably by the end of the week. And if you're listening to the podcast, it probably already is fixed and ready to go, because I'm recording this middle of the week and I have editing to do and things like that. So by the time you guys are hearing this, I probably will already have the bike fixed. I'm still on track to get back to Track Addicts in a couple of weeks. I'm still on track to race an ARMA the week after. And to be honest, since my crash, I cannot wait to get back on a motorcycle. Like, the weekend was so good. Even having this crash that ended it, that I cannot wait to be back at the races. I cannot wait to be back with my group of friends, and I just cannot wait to be back on a bike. So I have not done any street riding at all this year, and I was itching so bad to go riding last night, even just street riding, just so that I could be back on a motorcycle, that I posted on one of the Facebook groups with like Omaha street riding about like what bike nights were going on, because I'm so determined. I was like, gosh, like I want to ride. And I ended up not going to a bike night, ended up not street riding. Decided to relax a little bit, go for a run, some of those things. But I've just been itching and itching, and like I don't know, I'm confident. But anyways, so that's the weekend recap. It was a fantastic weekend, 10 out of 10. I've got some bike repairs to do. It's never going to look quite as nice as what it did, but it will be fine. And I cannot wait to be back on track in a couple of weeks. So if you've made it this far, you've listened, thank you for listening, and we will catch you guys next time.